Hi everyone, it's Lisa here. I'm back today with a video for you. Today I'm going to be colouring this beautiful image from Studio Katia with Tombow dual brush markers. I'm going to start off by stamping the image onto some Strathmore BRISTOL smooth cardstock. I'm going to be using Versamark ink and I'm going to apply some gold embossing powder and I'm going to heat set that. Now I did toy around with different kinds of papers before I settled on the BRISTOL Smooth. I tried some hot press, some cold press, but really I preferred the look that I got when I used the smooth cardstock. So that's what I decided to use in today's video. There's no right or wrong in terms of the cardstock. You can use a textured cardstock. I just preferred the look that I got personally from the smooth, and it may be because these markers are new to me. I really haven't played with them that much. I went with a BRISTOL smooth cardstock because it felt more comfortable to me at this time, but as I say, I haven't had them long, haven't had much time to play with them, and you can use a textured cardstock, but they just blend a little bit differently, so I went with what was more comfortable today. And I'm working with it as I do with my zig markers. I lay my first colour down, my lightest colour, and I just blend that out to give myself a kind of base to work on. And I do try and leave some lighter areas, but at this point it's just about getting a layer of colour down, not really providing any kind of dimension or contrast at this stage. And I do a similar thing with the main floral image. I take my lightest pink, it's the number 703, and I apply that to most of the areas in the main image, not every single part of it. And it's quite helpful, this image. You can actually see how the petals fold, so it makes it quite easy to see where you're going to have some shadows. So I start off by putting that light layer of pink down in all the areas where I can see an obvious shadow. It does take a little while to colour the image, and I have sped it up because it was an hour of footage or over an hour of footage, and people just don't have the time to watch that in real time. So I have sped it up quite a lot, and I will play some music a little bit later on because there's a limited amount I can tell you actually about the markers at this stage. So I'm continuing to add in my shadows here with the same pink, and I will heat set this once I finish with this first layer, and then I go back and I add in some green, and I just basically keep adding colour and heat setting in between. I make sure my cardstock is dry before I add my next layer on top of both the leaves and the floral image. I start off by actually using my markers in quite a uniform way. I start with the light pink, I go on my second layer with a slightly darker pink, and then I finish off by using a purple to really add some depth to parts of the images. But I do jump around a bit towards the end of the colouring because I'm looking at the image as it's kind of been created, and I adjust things as I go a little bit. There were some areas that I didn't think had enough pink, and then some areas that I felt needed a bit of a deeper pink, and then some other areas that I felt needed more purple. And I work sometimes off a block and sometimes directly by applying the marker to the cardstock. The reason that I use the block is because I try and water it down slightly before I actually take it to the paper, and I think that this really helps on the parts of the image that you want to keep fairly light, because the markers, like zigs, are quite heavily pigmented. So depending again on the look that I want on that particular petal, I either take the marker direct to the paper or I add some onto a block and I pick it up from there. And I also should mention, I haven't taped my cardstock down to a board. I do normally do that when I watercolour, but sometimes I find it isn't necessary when you're using a really kind of light layer of water. If I was doing a watercolour wash or something, I would definitely tape my paper down, but because this is really quite limited water going on this cardstock. It isn't a watercolour cardstock, so you really don't want to saturate it. I don't actually tape it down and I don't have any warping at all. I'm going to pop on some music now while I colour the rest of the image, and I'll be back at the end to show you the assembly of the card. I'm going to work on the rest of my card now. This is the MARILYN cover die from Simon Says Stamp. It's a really beautiful die, and I wanted to go for a tone on tone look for the background of the floral image. So I taped this down using a low tack tape to some navy cardstock, and I ran it through my Big Shot machine. I did use a shim for this. It is an intricate die. I did try it without and it didn't cut through the whole way, so I redid it using a shim and it cut through absolutely perfectly. And I'm just popping all the bits out here. It takes a little while, and I did use a craft pick to pop out the last few bits. Off camera I used a spray adhesive on the back of it, and I just secured that down onto a navy base card. I took a piece of paper and I just ran my hands over it just to make sure that that was actually stuck down perfectly. For my sentiment I used the Blooming Bunch set, and I took the birthday wishes. I used some navy cardstock again. I treated it with an anti-static bag and used Versamark ink, and then I applied some gold embossing powder and heat set that. The whole card was actually planned around some navy blue jewels that I use at the end. I actually won them in a recent giveaway from Studio Katia, and I absolutely fell in love with them. I showed them in my latest haul video. So my whole card was actually planned around me wanting to use these midnight blue jewels, which I think are so pretty. So just moving on to the last bit of the card, I fussy cut the floral image out and I put some foam tape on the back. And I'm just playing around with the layout here, just making sure that I get it as I want it before I push the image firmly down onto the background. The sentiment also has some foam tape on the back, and I'm just adhering that to the panel using a T-square ruler to make sure that it's lined up. And now I'm going to finish off by applying the jewels. I use a wet adhesive to secure them down, and I did actually remove the ones that were around the sentiment. You'll see that in the final photo. I just didn't feel like I liked them around the sentiment in the end, but the jewels are super pretty and they look really lovely when you put them in the light, so I'm glad I managed to get them on a card. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube knows you want to see more from me. I'll have a full list of the products over on my blog and in the description below. But thank you so much for watching, and I will be back with another project for you soon.